If you've been watching my other videos about how to keep the reader reading, this is the third part in the series. So for part one, we talked about how using a strategic hook will hook the reader and get them engaged to even start reading your book in the first place. And then the second video, we talked about how using strategic transitions will keep the reader engaged and keep the pages turning. Now I want to talk about the closing part, the closure of the chapter, the end. This is equally as important because it will make sure that the reader goes all the way from chapter 1, 10, whatever. It makes sure that they stay engaged with your nonfiction thought leadership book. If any of this seems of interest to you, then definitely go ahead and subscribe to this channel, and also at the end of the video, if you got something from it, do me a favor, share it with someone who you think it can impact. I'll give you a second to do that as I look over my notes. All right, thank you so much for doing that. And by the way, my name is Lynette Renee Doby, and I'm an Amazon best-selling ghostwriter, and I am here to impart writing tips for emerging writers, for authors who eventually want to publish their own book, or anyone else who's just interested in anything nonfiction book writing. That's why I am here. So let's go ahead and get into this topic. Crafting a compelling chapter ending. Get your reader to the next chapter. So I've talked about this in other videos. People have this attention span of this. So we want to make sure that they are locked in. And one of the devices that you do to ensure that this happens is you want a strong close to the end of your chapter. So we're going to go ahead and start with number one. You want to summarize all the key points of the content that you presented in the chapter. So this summary is just that. It's key points and takeaways. Do not go verbatim. So we went over this, we went over that, we went over this. No. For instance, you don't want to be too on the nose, like this example here, right? In this chapter, we discussed. I mean, you could say that, but it's just too kind of term paperish. You want to be a little bit more strategic and creative with the way that you say that. So here's a good example of what I think you could use. We began this chapter discussing, and through the evolution of the topic, we have arrived here. So you see how we talk about the different little points. You can insert them, of course, of what was discussed, and then you want the reader to join you in reviewing what the conclusion of those thoughts were. So you want to be definitely strategic, don't be verbatim, and also don't be too long-winded. Make sure it's succinct. And then that leads me to the next part, because I want you to do a little bit of a teaser. In your close, I think it's important for you to foreshadow and give the reader a teaser of what is yet to come, because they want to know a little sprinkling of why they should keep reading. This is the ticket. This is the device that will keep them within the book. So you don't want to say something like, oh, in the next chapter, we're going to go over how to have a difficult conversation with your colleague or whatever. You want to see something like this instead. As we continue to build on this concept, you'll see how the concept can impact your life and your team. And then you could also add like another clause or a whole other sentence and say, you want to stick around for this because especially if you're having this problem, this is the solution. Again, that might have been a little bit too on the nose, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. You want to make sure that they see the reason why they're here outlined in a forthcoming chapter, if not the next chapter, or at least a subsequent chapter. They want to know what's coming up. And so you want to sprinkle a little bit of a teaser all throughout the book, but do it strategically and make sure that it's aligned and you're not just making copy or putting content in there just to have content in there. Make sure that you give them a little something, tease them a little bit. And also, before I move on, I want to say, don't give too much away. Don't do like a whole chapter summary for the upcoming summary. I mean, upcoming chapter. It should be just like a sentence or two. Don't do too much. Next, I think you should use a call to action within the ending part of the chapter. So a call to action enables the reader to have a next step. So you could say something like, what does the concept look like in your life? You want them to be kind of reflective or contemplative about everything that was just reviewed. You want them to kind of get out their journal and write out something. Like sometimes in books, I have journal prompts. When I'm writing books for other people, I have journal prompts for the reader to reflect on and think on, because I think whenever you write things down, that's when it gives it power. So you might want to have something like that at the end of your chapter. Or you could say, consider how blank could impact you, because that would be more like a journal prompt. Whatever was reviewed in that chapter, you kind of want your reader to position themselves within your thought leadership and see how they can get the impact from what you've shared. So always have a really clever call to action that inspires them to take a next step. Next, and I want you to use this next one strategically, y'all. Don't have it be long, especially if you've already done this in the introduction. So the next is share a personal story or anecdote. So let's say that you've already had a story in your introduction. You could do a callback and you could kind of reference that story. Or let's say if you're talking about building empathy in the workplace as an example, you could maybe insert a brief story about how you were impactful to one of your employees by giving them a moment to share what's going on in their life, and you use empathy. And then after that, that employee had the best quarter of the year out of everyone on your sales team. So you can end, a chapter with that and have it be short and succinct in a nice little package. And then you could use another transition. Remember, we talked about transitions to talk about, what's coming in the next chapter. So you're going to do a little foreshadowing. You see how we kind of built all of that together? But stories and anecdotes are always a good thing to end in your book if you do it well. Again, don't be long. It should be brief. Let's do 2 or 3 sentences. You kind of don't want to give them too much, especially if you're going to do a callback to that same story later. Just give them enough to whet their appetite. Next, you may opt to end with a powerful quote or statistic. So folks really love a good stat or a quote, honey. They do. They're like, oh, okay. Like I think I've shared in other videos that I am a mentor to emerging writers. So I'm working with a mentee right now, and under my tutelage, we're doing a client's book. And so the client, without giving too much away, she wants to have song quotes from her favorite artist at the end of each chapter. It's really cool. And it has, you just want to make sure it's aligned with what you've talked about, precedingly. Because if it was just out of the blue, something that's not related, it's not going to be impactful. But if it marries very well, which she's doing in this book, my client who's writing the book, it's aligned, the selection. So you want to make sure that that's impactful, and then you can put those at the end of your chapters as well. And another statistic, I'm always about statistics. Sometimes in my videos, I say, hey, 99% of people don't finish their book. I help my clients get to the 1%. So you could put some variety of statistic and make sure that you do place a footnote to show where you got it from. That's a whole other video. Let me know if you want me to talk about the different writing styles in terms of Chicago manual style or AP, all those different things. I could do that. So put in the comments if you want me to do a video on that. But anyway, getting back to the stats, people like stats. They want to see the validity of what you're saying. So you can definitely end the chapter that way as well. Now, as it relates to final chapters, they have their own sort of thing going on. And I think it's important to notate them as well. Take note of that as well. So when it comes to final chapters, you want to put a bow at the end of the book. Or when I was in grad school and for acting, we would say you want to put a button at the joke. You want to make sure that everything is kind of wrapped up. It's encapsulated in the final chapter. I love doing final chapters. They're literally like my favorite part of the book, maybe because the book is over and all the hard work is coming to an end, but also because it's a culmination of everything that we talked about in the preceding chapters. So what you want to do is you want to create for your reader a sense of resolution or transformation. You want to give them an expectation of where they should be versus where they started when they began your book. So a good example of that is Mel Robbins, the podcaster and author. I'll put one of her videos in the clip, but she has this thought where she says at the end of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you should take action. So I think she says within 30 days of doing that, you'll see, it's some time period, don't quote me, but within a certain time period of doing that countdown, you will see drastic changes in your life. That is the transformation that the readers are here for. That is why they picked up your book, especially if you're doing a thought leadership book. It could be on personal development, business development, whatever. But if you're doing that, they want to know what the transformation is, or conversely, they want to know, or similarly, they want to know what the resolution is. What problem did your book solve for them? Since they've read all the preceding pages and chapters, what is going to be the resolution? So you definitely want to make sure that you encapsulate that into your final chapter of the book. Next, I advise you to declare the impact. Declare the impact. So when it comes to declaring the impact, you want to conclude with a bold or concise statement of who the reader has been transformed to. So in addition to creating the sense of resolution transformation, you want them to declare the impact. You want them to finish reading and get up and say, you know what, this is going to be happening in my life because I've read this book. So you want them to have a declaration. So I've seen it done in different ways, and I've done it in different ways. You could say, start your next Monday with a renewed sense of purpose, something like that. You want them to be excited and ready to take on the new day or the new week to see your thought leadership and practice. So you want to make sure that you declare the impact and make it punchy and aligned with the book's overall message. Don't have it come out of left field now. Make sure that it's aligned. Now, this is one of the most important parts when it comes to the final chapter of a book. You want to invite your reader to keep the conversation going with future interaction. So after they've read the final sentence, you could maybe put something at the very bottom, italicize it, or depending on which writing style you're using, or put in small print. If you want to take this conversation further, follow up with me on my website. Follow up with me in my blog, connect with me on LinkedIn. You want the reader to have some future interaction with you, specifically if you're an author. When it comes to writers, like let's say your company has consulted or you've ghostwritten the book for a client, you can put it in the initial contract that even though you will not be named as the author, your company will have some recognition either in the thank you or the acknowledgments. And so that way, that could be kind of like a lead magnet for you, because someone could be like, wow, this book was done incredibly. I know this person may not have done this on their own. Who helped them out? And so they'll see your company name, and then they'll maybe reach out to you. Now, again, that would be something that would be worked out within the contract, which would be signed before you even start writing your first page. But still, it's all about reader interaction. You want these people to stay locked in with you as the ghostwriter and also with you as someone who is the author. Because when you release your second book, or you're working on the second book, you can send out to your email list and say, hey, thank you so much for reading the first book. Guess what? We're doing it again. It's all about marketing yourself so you can keep a relationship with your readers so they don't feel like it's one and done. How often have you read a book and there's no way for you to connect with the author? I mean, they won't engage with you, but it is kind of cool to be on someone's list if you really enjoyed their content and you want to see what else they have coming down the pipeline. So in summation, my whole reason for doing this video is that I think it's important to leave room for curiosity. I'm going to make this bigger so you all can see, and I'm going to move it over. Leave room for curiosity. That's the thought that I want you all to have in your mind when it comes to closing out a chapter, whether it's chapter 1 or chapter 10. You always want to use language that keeps your reader locked in and keeps them curious about what you're going to do. And you can do this in so many different creative ways. You can, like I said, you can use the quote, you can use the stat, you can use a story, I'm all for storytelling. So you want to make sure that all of those elements are interwoven into your final chapter, because your goal and your only goal is to keep the reader reading. All right, so that brings us to the end of this video. I hope it was helpful for you. And like I said at the top of the video, share this with someone who you think it can assist. And if you want to converse with me further, you want to talk about how I could be impactful to help you with your nonfiction book, or if you're just beginning your career as a professional writer, definitely contact me. I'd love to help you. You can go to www.rightwayconsulting.net, fill out an inquiry form, and I will be in touch with you. Once again, that's www.rightwayconsulting, W-R-I-T-E, wayconsulting.net. And this is Lynette Renee Dobie, an Amazon bestselling ghostwriter, and I will see you in the next upload. Take care of yourself.